All right, let's get right to it. We're diving deep into sports psychology to tackle a massive question. What actually shapes an athlete's personality? Are champions just born that way, or does the game itself make them who they are? Let's find out.
I want you to picture this. It's a cup final, the crowd's going wild, and we're in the last few minutes. An athlete, the one who's normally cool as a cucumber, suddenly snaps and makes this reckless, aggressive tackle. What just happened? Was that some hidden personality boiling over, or did the pressure of the moment just completely change them? That's the exact puzzle we're going to piece together today.
So, to get to the bottom of this, we first need to be on the same page about what we're even talking about. Let's unpack what personality actually means in the world of sport.
Now, there are tons of definitions out there, but a really useful one for us is to think of personality as this unique, pretty stable mix of your character, your temperament, and even your physical build. All of this stuff determines how you deal with the world around you, especially when you're on the pitch or the court.
A brilliant way to picture this is with Hollander's model. Seriously, just think of an onion. It gives us this perfect visual. On the outside, you have the layers that everyone sees, but as you peel them away, you get closer and closer to that deep, unchangeable core. So let's break down those layers. Right at the center, that's your psychological core. This is the real you. Your deepest beliefs, your values, it really doesn't change. The next layer out is your typical responses. This is how you usually act, kind of like your default setting. And then, right on the surface, you've got role-related behavior. This is the most changeable part. It's why you might act one way as a team captain and a totally different way when you're just hanging out with your friends.
Which brings us to our first major theory. The trait approach poses a really simple question. Are we just born with our personality? Is it all just nature?
The trait approach pretty much says, yep, it's all in your genes. It suggests that the traits you get from your parents are stable, they're consistent, and you'll basically behave the same way no matter what the situation is. So, if you're born competitive, you're going to be competitive in a light training session, a friendly kickabout, and the World Cup final.
A classic example of this is the whole Type A versus Type B personality idea. The Type A athlete is that super intense, driven person who lives for competition, but also might get stressed out easily. The Type B personality, on the other hand, is way more chilled out, less competitive. According to trait theory, you're one or the other, and that's just the way you're wired.
But that feels a little too simple, right? It doesn't explain our athlete in the cup final who acted completely out of character, which leads to a massive question. What if the situation, the environment, is actually more powerful than our DNA?
Okay, let's explore that. This brings us to the complete opposite end of the spectrum, the situational approach. This one is all about nurture.
This theory completely flips the trait approach on its head. It says our behavior isn't fixed at all. Nope. Instead, we learn it from our environment, from our coaches, our teammates, the heroes we look up to. Your personality actually changes based on the social situation you're in. The big name you need to know here is Albert Bandura. His social learning theory is the cornerstone of this whole idea. He basically argued that we learn how to behave by watching and copying other people, especially when we see them get rewarded for that behavior.
And this learning happens in 4 stages. And listen up, because this is gold for your exams. First, you have to pay attention to someone, like a role model. Second, you have to retain what you saw. Remember it. Third, you need to be physically able to do it, which is motor reproduction. And finally, you have to be motivated to copy it, which usually happens when you get some kind of reward, like praise from a coach or the feeling of winning.
So we've got nature from the trait approach and nurture from the situational approach. But what if the real answer isn't choosing sides? What if it's a mix of both? Well, that brings us to the interactional approach.
And this is the theory that most sports psychologists pretty much land on today. It's actually a really elegant idea. Our behavior isn't just our personality, and it isn't just the situation we're in. It's the unique way the two interact with each other. And it all comes down to this brilliant little formula from the psychologist Kurt Lewin. B equals F of P times E. This one equation perfectly sums up the whole concept. Our behavior is a function of our personality interacting with the environment. So let's break that down real quick. B is the behavior you actually see. P is your core personality. And E is the environment, like that high-pressure cup final. The key is that they multiply each other. So in a chill environment, your personality probably shines through. But in a really intense environment, the situation can amplify certain traits. And that's what leads to that out-of-character aggression. Okay, so we've got the theories down. But what's the point? How can you actually use this stuff for your A-levels and for your own game?
Let's make it practical.
Well, understanding this stuff lets you analyze yourself and everyone around you. You can finally make sense of why you might be quiet in class but a loud, vocal leader on the pitch. You can see how a certain coach brings out the best in you, and you can even start to predict how your opponents might react when the pressure's on.
And for your A-levels, these are exactly the kinds of questions you need to be asking yourself. Can you identify your core traits, your P? Can you point to specific situations, your E, that change how you behave? And most importantly, can you give solid examples of how those two things interact? Nailing that is absolutely key.
So here's the big takeaway. Your personality isn't just something you're stuck with. It's shaped by what you see, what you learn, and the situations you find yourself in. And that means you have a choice. Understanding the forces that shape you gives you the power to decide how you want to respond. So the final question isn't just what makes an athlete tick, it's what kind of athlete will you choose to be?